Peter, I am so excited. This is TPN's first live webinar for systems training.
Can you believe it?
Yay, we've done quite a few webinars in terms of legal and lockdown, but now this is the new way of doing things, and I'm quite excited. We have over 1,500 RSVPs.
Can you believe it? And usually at Bytes we only have around about 350 in the room. So this is high pressure.
This is Peter, you're so funny. So I thought what we'd do is we'd just chat a little bit about the agenda for today. So we're going to have an hour session, and the first 45 minutes we're going to be doing it on systems training.
Yep.
So you're going to be taking us through the system. Specifically, we're looking at what? Credit checks?
100%. We're going to go through some credit checks today on the system itself for 45 minutes.
Brilliant.
And then we're going to have a nice 15-minute Q&A at the end.
But the Q&A is not limited to the 15 minutes.
No.
So everyone that's registered and logged in and watching the live session, please log into YouTube. Once you logged into YouTube, that will allow you to access the chat, and you can then ask questions right throughout the session. And I know so many people have been giving us thumbs up and hellos from right around the country. Welcome to everyone. I was actually just running through the names. It's fabulous to see so many people and so many names, and old clients and as well as new clients. I mean, I was looking on this on the chat, and there's some clients that have registered literally in the last week. So welcome. And we're very excited to showcase the credit checks and helping you to select quality tenants in your business at the moment, now more than ever.
Yes.
But back to the question. So in the Q&A, in the chat, I'm going to be manning that.
Perfect.
So Peter, I'm going to walk off screen. I'm going to stay in the studio, and as our delegates are asking questions, I'm going to interrupt you. So
please do.
So ask the questions as he's going through. If something's not clear, we'll deal with it right then and there. I think that's the easiest way of doing it.
Thank you, Michelle. And I think for a lot of our viewers today on the live session, I think a lot of them want to know what's busy happening in the marketplace. We put out reports for Q2. What have you seen in Q3? What's busy happening in the marketplace?
Okay, so a quick update then. We sent out the rental monitor, was it last week? I think it was last week. And John Luce from FNB very kindly guest wrote it for us. So I've got some preliminary data in terms of Q3 available. We've been running the numbers literally every single day, and we've been tracking how tenants are paying on a daily basis. As a reminder, 81.5% of tenants in good standing in Q1 coming into the lockdown, deterioration by 8% to 73.5% of tenants in good standing in Q2. In July, we're looking at around about 74%. In August, maybe 74.5%. And in September, it looks like it's going to track around about 74.5%, Peter. So I'm not seeing a recovery from a rental collection for the residential tenants in good standing.
Yes, Michelle, that means to me, just going through the system today, credit checking of your tenants and placing the correct tenants is absolutely vital at the moment. You've got to know who your tenant is.
Absolutely. So especially in the low end of the market. Yep. So go back and read the rental monitor if you haven't read it, but just as a heads up, our tenants below 3,000 the worst performing, and the 3 to 4.5 also there's some challenges there. So really at this stage, picking your quality tenant is vital. And then Peter, won't you just, if you've got time in the last 5 minutes before we go into Q&A, just quickly share with everyone how they access their monitoring. It's free.
Lovely.
It doesn't cost anything, right? So we may as well showcase to our clients how they go and use it and access it. It's not just about finding the quality tenants, it's about maintaining the quality of your portfolio overall and knowing how to benchmark yourself against your peers.
It's about being proactive with your collections at the moment.
Absolutely.
Finding the right tenants, submitting the data into a bureau, but also monitoring your tenants on a monthly basis is imperative.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to leave. I'm just going to say one last thing at the end of the session, if I may. We're going to put out the feedback link. So in order to qualify for your certificate with your CPD points for attendance, please remember to fill the feedback form in. In the last 15 minutes of the session, as we go into Q&A, Peter, I'm going to put it up on the chat. I'm chatting with the handle TPN. So I'm the TPN handle. I'll put the bit.ly link up there. It's a feedback form. Just rate us. We always appreciate your feedback. Please let us know if you found something in the session that we can improve on, that you would like a different topic on. Give us that feedback. I promise you, We're not sensitive people. We take criticism just fine.
I'm sensitive.
No, you're not. Peter's not sensitive. Okay, send us those feedbacks, and we'll keep that feedback form available for an hour after the session.
That's
but then we
exactly
close it. Then it's closed, and you won't get your CPD point certificates unless you submit that.
Regardless of that, just saying that the YouTube video will be on the TPN YouTube to watch afterwards. So if there's somebody in your office that's currently not linked in or not signed into the YouTube channel, or not busy watching us today, that video will be available afterwards as well. Yeah. You just won't get your CPD certificate.
100%. Peter, over to you.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you.
First things first, log into the TPN system with the login details provided. Obviously, these will be provided by our help desk staff. You're more than welcome to contact us on that. We will be putting up on the chat as well all our contact details. That includes the contact details of the full TPN staff where you can contact us all. We're going to put the data information or the data submission, the data department information on there as well as the legal eagle. So if you'd like to contact myself, Greg or Jade with a legal question after the session, perhaps it's a long-winded eviction question, you're more than welcome to use those contact details afterwards as well. But please log into the system. Just click login over there. And then because we're doing credit checks today, you're obviously going to go and click on the credit checks tab right up at the top. It's going to take you to this page. Now from this page, there's a couple of things you can do. From your left-hand screen, you can do a new credit check on a consumer. That is a person with an ID number or a passport number. You can run a new deed search. You can run a know your client check. That is specifically for FICA verification purposes, where we are going to give you verified IDs as well as the addresses of that party for FICA purposes, and a pre-assessment check. Now, the pre-assessment check is not a credit check. It is a check that you can perform on a prospective applicant or a prospective tenant when they are viewing the property or prior to viewing of the property, just to show you some credit report indicators. So perhaps if the person's got a judgment or they've got a blacklisting, that's going to be picked up on the pre-assessment check. But just know, it is not a credit check, it's a pre-assessment check prior to actually performing a credit check. Then there is the business credit check that can obviously be performed on PTY limiteds and closed corporations, and then you can trace consumers by their ID, passport number, surname, date of birth, as well as their telephone number. For today's purposes, we are going to be running a credit check on a consumer. So that's a person with an ID or passport number. Click right over there. It's going to open up the step 1 page for you, where you actually enter the consumer details. Your inquiry reason as a property client is going to be set at rentals or setting limit for goods or services. Keep it at that. And then you've got a space to input your reference. Now, that's not a reference that we would use. It's something that you would use. So, for example, if you want to go and input a reference, it could be the property details, it could be the tenant's details, so that you can match up the credit checks with the actual party that you're performing that on your invoices. You can then go and fill out the person's RSA ID number, and if you're doing a search on a passport number, you can just click on that button right over there. When you've clicked that, it is going to open up a different page. You fill in the passport number, and what is vitally important over here is that you fill out a date of birth and a nationality. So for today's purposes, we are running a credit check on Fred Smith. Now, if you know Fred Smith, this is not Fred Smith. This is obviously a credit report in the industry, but it's a hypothetical scenario, so we're going to take you through that. We're going to show you all the different types of accounts that Fred Smith's got in his name, and all the little parameters that you need to take into consideration when actually placing this tenant in your property. Fill out the first name and surname, and please take these details directly from the ID. Not from the application form, because some people call themselves something different on the application form. Directly from the ID, please. Also go and fill out a current address. Now, that is the address that the tenant is currently residing at, currently staying. It is not the premises where they're moving into, the rental premises that you are currently busy marketing. Fill out the postal code, province, as well as cell number, and then right at the bottom, go and click next. Step 2, confirm consent. Now, TPN has 3 different credit scores available. There is a basic, a silver, and a gold credit score. The basic credit score is going to give you a default application score, the propensity of the tenant to default on his rental payments. The silver credit check is going to give you specifically that basic credit score, so the propensity of default, as well as giving you an affordability assessment, so you can go fill that out. I'm going to show you how to do that now. And the gold credit score is going to give you both of those, as well as a squat score, which I'm going to show you directly off the credit checks. For today's purposes, I'm running a gold credit score on Fred Smith. Fill out Fred's net monthly income, his total installments, as well as the contributors. So perhaps you're running a credit check on 2 parties, perhaps they're co-tenants taking occupation and one's only going to be paying half of the rent. That can also be completed on the system right over there. RSA ID verification is automatically ticked. It is so vital that you do this. You need to know that the person that you are placing in the property is actually the person in front of you. I'm going to show you how nice that is off the system as well. We're actually going to give you a little bit of a photograph. And then for NCA compliance declaration, that is absolutely vital.
Peter?
Yes,
Can
Michelle.
I just take you back?
Yes, please.
We've had a question here about, I don't understand the reference tab. So if we could just go back to the reference tab.
No problem. Let's go back over there. Let's go right over there. So the reference tab, like I said, is for your reference purposes. It's not for ours. What I would suggest you fill out in the reference is the property address that you are marketing, where the tenant is going to take occupation if he is a successful application. So it's not something that we're going to use, it's something that you're going to use, and it's going to display on your invoices so that you can match up the credit check to the actual property where you perform the credit check on. Thanks, Michelle. So moving back to the NCA compliance declaration, this is absolutely vital. Please know that you must have written consent of the tenant to perform a credit check, because we're having a look at their credit history, because we're having a look at their propensities to default. You need to have consent in terms of the National Credit Act to perform a credit check. If you're not using TPN lease agreements at the moment, must I say this? Yes, I may. Please go and use TPN lease agreements, but regardless, if you're not, we can give you our consent verification clause as well, so that you can input that into your lease agreement so that you know you're covered from an NCA compliance perspective.
Well, now that you've put it out there, I suggest you tell people where to go to get the lease agreement, Peter.
Thank you, Michelle. Please access the TPN shop. Those details will also be put in the chat. Michelle's going to put that up for us right away. And you can just go and access the TPN shop. Remember, from the TPN shop, there's a lot available to purchase. There's the TPN residential lease pack. It's available in English and Afrikaans. There's the commercial lease pack. There is a newly released sales pack, which we're very excited about. And Michelle, I'm going to mention this, but we will be preparing a POPI compliance pack as well in the next coming months. So please have a look out for that. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and click the notifications, because you'll be notified of whenever we do new innovative releases from TPN's side. But go and click next. If you need that compliance clause, send me a mail. We'll put my details as well as the legal guys' emails up in the chat as well. Then click next. Now this I'm just going to take a moment on. I'm going to step back, because this, if you're not listening to anything else I say today, is the most important thing. With rentals currently, it is absolutely imperative that you submit data into the TPN Credit Bureau system. And the reason for that is because you're creating an immediate repercussion for non-payment. Think about it this way. This is what I always tell people in training, is that when you've got a gym account or a cell phone account and you don't pay the cell phone company or the gym company, there's an immediate repercussion to that non-payment. You can't go gym, you can't use your cell phone. But for rentals in South Africa, and remember I come from a legal background, there's almost no immediate repercussion for non-payment of rentals. Eviction is a protracted process. It takes quite a while to do. And if you submit data into a bureau, it already affects your tenant's credit rating immediately when you submit data into the bureau. That's what you want at the moment. You want to create the immediate repercussion. If you're uncertain of how to submit data into the system, we're also going to put up the contact details of the data department at TPN. Please contact them and they'll be able to assist you with whatever property management system you're currently busy using. Even if you're busy using Excel, we might refer you to a different property management system or get you access to TPN Rentbook, which is our free property management system for the first 20 properties that you load onto the system itself. But then the data gets pushed through into TPN automatically, and the immediate repercussion for non-payment is created as a result. This is imperative. If you're not doing that, please make sure you do that today. But because you submit data into the TPN Credit Bureau system, this TPN RentCheck inquiry, our upper tier, our premium inquiry, is going to be made available to you automatically as a result. This TPN RentCheck inquiry is a holistic inquiry, taking into consideration not just TPN data, but TransUnion data, South African Consumer Risk and Reporting Association data, deeds data, company's office data, home affairs data, and a whole host of different information on that specific tenant. This is the credit check that you want to run, whether it's commercial, whether it's residential, whether you're an agent or an individual landlord. This is the inquiry to run on a tenant. There are obviously model selection directly off the screen as well. You can perform a bank account verification if you need to do so and you're running debit orders. It's very important in terms of PASA, their rules, to run a bank account verification to make sure that the bank account is actually the bank account of the party that is going to pay the rental. Then there's the TPN bank code, as well as a qualification check and a criminal check. Probably don't want to run criminal checks on your tenants. It's going to take a little bit of time. Plus, we need the fingerprints of the tenants to do so. This is usually used in instances for schools where they need to run criminal checks on their staff, as well as any person that has contact with children at the school, to make absolutely sure that that party does not have a sexual offense against a minor registered against their name in terms of the Sexual Offences Act. But after you've done so, this is going to be automatically ticked right at the top. Remember, yellow box check is the one to do. And you go and run that TPN RentCheck inquiry, and then it's going to give you all the information that you actually require. Then you go and click Perform Credit Check. And like magic, an immediate result is returned on that specific applicant. And I'm going to take you through this. We are going to take some time. I'm going to take you through the TransUnion data as well, specifically all the other account data, as well as the TPN tabs, to show you exactly what type of information we do give to you on a credit check. Just a quick note from my side as well, we've got some fantastic help desk representatives at TPN that can assist you in interpreting your credit checks as well. So if you've got a problem, if you don't know what something means on the system, on the credit check that you've just run, please contact our help desk representatives at TPN to assist you. The summary page is absolutely fantastic because it's going to give you a real nice holistic view of everything that's happening on the tenant's account. We're going to give you the consumer information, the contact type, full names, the title, whether the person's got dependents, whether they're married, their AKA information, as well as doing a full ID verification through Home Affairs. And what we can see over here is that your prospective applicant is Fred Smith. This is his photograph. This is what he's supposed to look like. He is married, he's male. We have run the check through the Home Affairs system as well as through the National Populations Register, and it passes for FICA purposes. So this is the actual person that you're running the credit check on. The TPN RentCheck scorecard is something that Chris Dickens has worked on so many hours, and it's such a fantastic way of quickly having a look at exactly what's going on this tenant's account. We're going to give you a gold credit score, which is a score ranging from A through to F, A being excellent, B being good, C being average, we don't have a D on the system, E being below average, and then F obviously being for poor. We're going to give you a credit history of the basic credit checks, telling you what the propensity of the person's default rating is, and what we can see over here, it is poor. The affordability assessment through the silver credits, it says that they can afford to pay you, they're most probably just not going to, and then the probability of squatting on this tenant is also very high. So this is not the type of tenant you place in your unit at the moment. Or ask a massive deposit. I'm joking. This is not the type of tenant you place. If you get something like this and you're worried, once again, ask the help desk representatives to assist you. We're going to give you a combined rental and credit account payment timeline. So we're going to show you across the board for the last 12 months, how has both the rental and the credit payments been made. And what we can see on Fred Smith's profile is that there is a deterioration in both rental and credit payments. Now, once again, taking a step back, I just need to explain to you what a good standing ratio means. A good standing ratio for some people might mean that the tenant pays on time each and every single month, but that's not what it means on the system. What it means on the system is good standing is a tenant that either pays on time, pays within a grace period, or pays late. But pays late means that the full rental and ancillary expenses has been made before the end of the month. So what we're actually saying here is on TPN payments, this tenant has only made 13% of payments in good standing. That means 13% of the time you are going to get your rental in before the end of the month. That's not great. With credit payments, it looks quite similar on 75% good standing, and then 4 negatives have been loaded onto your tenant's profile as well. And this means that the tenant has 3 judgments registered against their name, 1 default, which is a term that we use in terms of the National Credit Act, but you might know it in its colloquial form, which is called blacklisting. So the tenant has been blacklisted. We're going to show you where that is now. There's no notices on the tenant's credit profile. He's not under debt review, and nothing is under dispute. Just to display the nice colors that we have, we've got the paid on time, which is the dark green, on or before the first day of the month, or when the due date in terms of your contract is. The grace period payment category is on or before the 7th of the month, so between the 2nd and the 7th of the month, and then paid late between the 8th and the 31st, so all the payments made during that time period. Partial payments is purple, and that means only a percentage of the rental and ancillary expenses was made, and then no payments made was the red category.
Peter, I've been asked if
Yes,
you
Michelle.
could please comment about squatting tenants. Where do I get that data from? Now, I know it's coming, but I want to address it quickly, and we can share that it's coming, but...
Of course, Michelle. So once again, like I said at the beginning, submitting data into TPN is absolutely imperative. And that means creating the immediate repercussion. But we get all the data from all clients across the country, whether that be rental agencies, individual landlords, and bigger commercial clients who submit data on the tenant of how they pay each and every single month. This squat score is affected by how the tenant has made his previous rental payments, and I'm going to showcase that specifically on the TPN tab. Thanks, Michelle. On the credit report summary, we can also see that the ID has been verified. He's got 15 active accounts on TransUnion. Like we said, he's got 2 judgments as well as 1 blacklisting or default rating on TPN, the inquiries made, as well as the deeds on file, which we're going to take you through on the deeds on file tab as well. From the CPA account summary, this is going to be showcased in the TransUnion tab, but I want to show you from the first page that we actually give this information to you already. What we can see is that the tenant's got 15 active accounts. That is not accounts on TPN. That's all other accounts. It might be different service providers, the banks. His current balance, so the debt owing on all those accounts, is 1.8 million rand. His monthly installments on the debt is 108,000 rand, and his arrears balance is currently sitting at 520,000 rand. We've got that lovely rental guarantee product through Rentmaster. If you need more information on that, contact Rentmaster directly. There's contact addresses, contact numbers, as well as query information right down at the bottom. Now, probably my favorite tab to go through is this TPN tab, because we're so proud of the immense amount of data that we collect, but also to be able to showcase you what the tenant's propensity of making rental payments is going to be your calling card. It's going to be the thing that you need to focus on, because how our tenants made previous rental payments is sort of going to dictate how they're making payments in the future. So when we click on that TPN tab, all the data that's been loaded onto TPN is going to be loaded on here for you. So we're going to give you the header information, the AKA information, a credit summary, as well as associated companies. So you can see if Fred Smith is actually a member or a director of the closed corporation or company that they say they are. We can also show you that the companies are in deregistration, or they might be in business rescue or liquidation, and that will be all pre-populated on this tab for you. And then getting to the fun stuff is the TPN accounts. Now, once data has been submitted into TPN by the agency, by the landlord, or by a commercial client, the data gets reflected on TPN in this manner. We can see on the first account that the landlord was an individual landlord. Those are the property details, as well as the inception and the termination dates of the lease agreement, what the rental is. So this was 10,400 Rand, and how Fred Smith paid the specific landlord. And what we see on this tab is that Fred Smith made absolutely horrific rental payments. 7 months of did not pays in a row. You don't want to be sitting with a tenant like this. We're also going to give you the contact information so you can contact the previous agency to confirm the details, as well as asking what type of tenant the tenant actually was.
Peter, I have a question.
No problem, Michelle.
In fact, I have two, if we could just deal with them.
Yes, please.
The first one is when a prospective tenant applies, but they have rented before, and the landlord gave them a clean report, how can we be sure that the tenant will not default? It's an important question.
It is definitely an important question. So the big thing is contacting a landlord who perhaps had a bad tenant. I'm not saying all landlords are this way, and they haven't necessarily submitted data into TPN, and they tell you this tenant is a fantastic tenant. That is absolutely taken on risk, because you've got no idea what the previous situation of the rental was. If that landlord has submitted data into the TPN system, this is accurate, up-to-date, correct information. So you take this as correct. And what we can see specifically from this landlord, Piet Botha, perhaps you contacted him and he said it was a great tenant, but you didn't see the credit report. You didn't see how the payments were actually loaded onto TPN. It could be an absolute fallacy. It could be a lie. So the only thing you take it on is the TPN records, the actual TPN accounts on how the person has paid the rental. And that is going to lead to successful rentals, because you'll be able to see the accurate, correct, and updated information on TPN. That second question, Michelle?
Patience was asking about, is it arrears on the balance? And I think she was referring to at that point in time when you were talking about the balance outstanding on the account. If you could just address that.
Fantastic. What I'm actually going to do, Patience, is, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to wait until the TransUnion tab. So I'm going to showcase you exactly how the 1.8 million Rand, the 110,000 Rand, as well as the 520,000 Rand that we mentioned on the summary page is made up of. I'm going to take you through all of those accounts. So you're going to see exactly how that 1.8 million Rand, as well as the arrears balance, is made up of the tenant. What we can see on the second lease agreement also is a different landlord who had a rental amount of 13,600 Rand. And we can also see that Fred Smith did not make rental payments for 14 months in a row. He had to, in effect, be evicted from this property, and that's what we can see from the default information that was loaded. Remember, default information means blacklisting information, and what we can see over here is the landlord, Thuli, blacklisted the tenant, blacklisted Fred Smith on the specific date, when the default actually occurred, the rating is evicted, and the actual amount due. So this is going to give you a lot of information on the specific tenant. But remember, this is a blacklisting. This mars Fred Smith's credit profile quite substantially. The thing about blacklisting, just before we head into the next tab, is blacklisting or default listings only stay on a tenant's credit profile for 12 months. That's a single year. Whereas payment profile information, this information that you're seeing over here, the line information on how the tenant's paid each and every single month, stays on for a period of 5 years. You also need very little regulatory compliance to submit data into your bureau, whereas for blacklisting, and we're going to do a nice long training session on blacklisting as well as letters of demand in the next TPN systems training on property, is a process. You have to send a letter of demand, give the tenant 20 business days to pay you. It needs to be a specific letter of demand indicating that the credit report will be negatively affected as a result of the non-payment, plus the tenant needs to be 3 consecutive billing cycles in arrears. So submitting payment profile information to TPN is the go. Then we've got a second or a third lease agreement on here as well. We can see it was managed by an agency, ABC Property Management. It was in Pretoria. The inception dates, the rental amount was 13,500 Rand. All those account details, what the outstanding balances is, what the amounts paid was, and how the lease agreement was paid as well. Paid late, did not pay, paid late, did not pay, did not pay. And then we've got a final account here, which is a storage lease agreement for an amount of 7,200 Rand, and Fred Smith made payments intermittently. So we can see a lot of did not pays, a lot of paid lates, some partial payments, and 1 or 2 paid on times. And right at the bottom, we're going to give you the contact addresses, contact numbers, as well as the inquiry information. So if a person has performed a TPN credit check previously on Fred Smith, you'll be able to see this information directly at the bottom of the screen as well.
Peter, I've been asked what
Yes,
would
Michelle.
be the best way to track someone with a passport number, as they can renew the passport number and start afresh? Good question.
This is, strangely enough, one of the first things that you actually taught me at TPN about 5-6 years ago. Michelle actually had a tenant that had a passport number, and you must tell me if I'm correct over here, had a passport number. They were in South Africa. She ran the credit check on the passport number. During that time period, they applied for asylum status as well. They were issued with an ID document, which is obviously for asylum seekers.
Which is a refugee number.
Which is a refugee number. And during that time period, they actually became a citizen of South Africa as well. So they've got 3 different details: passport, the ID with the refugee status on, as well as the ID. Through the TPN credit check system, it picked up on all 3 of those specific numbers. So the passport number, the refugee status number, as well as the ID number, and it gave you all the same information on that specific tenant. So we would actually match that up for you.
So if I can just share how
Yes.
we do that. So how we do that is with surname, name, date of birth, nationality, as well as the passport number. And it is therefore so important that that information is captured accurately so that that matching process can take place.
100%. Like we said from the beginning, don't do it on the application form, do it on the passport, do it on the ID. Get the information off there so you know exactly what's busy going on. Michelle, I am going to showcase a little bit of the employment information if you wouldn't mind. This is also a different database that TPN has. It's called the Staff Share database. If you would like to, and I'm going to sort of press you to do this, submit employment information on TPN. We don't take salary information into consideration whatsoever, but if you do that through the TPN system, you're not just going to be able to access the TPN RentCheck inquiry, but the Smart Check inquiry as well, which is going to give you verified employment information. So you'll be able to see if Fred Smith is actually employed at the company they say they're employed at, and whether they are currently employed there, whether the contract has been terminated, whether he's perhaps been fired, but we're going to give you all that information directly off the system as well. Once again, if you need information on submitting that specific data, contact our data department. They'll be able to assist you with that. But what we can see over here is that Fred Smith was employed by a property company. The contract was terminated. He was dismissed at a previous place of employment, and he is currently employed also at another property company for a salary and a bonus, and he does not earn commission. It is 100% basic. So you can match up the details that he's actually given you on the TPN credit check as well.
Peter, sorry, I want to interrupt you again because we've got a question. It is not right to blacklist tenants affected by due to COVID. That's my take. And that is 100% correct. All the credit bureaus take into account any COVID agreements, payment holidays that may be reached between the banks did it in terms of your mortgage or your car finance, and TPN absolutely did it in terms of tenant agreements that were reached. Please address that quickly.
100%. I think I'm going to answer it in a little bit of a roundabout way as well. I'm sure you all saw this, but we made available to clients free of charge the TPN Rental Recovery Pack. Now, from the beginning of the lockdown period, from the beginning of the pandemic, we said that sufficient goodwill negotiations between landlord and tenants is so incredibly important during this time. There are lots of people struggling out there with financial difficulty, lots of companies not being able to make rental payments. And we also feel that during this time period, a tenant and landlord needs to speak to each other. There needs to be effective communication between the parties so that at the end of the day, people's credit profiles, as well as taking into consideration blacklisting, payment profile information, is not negatively affected as a result of a tenant who is willing and able, or let's not say able, willing to negotiate with a landlord for future rental payments by either using rental deferment agreements or deposit utilizations. So we're on 100% exactly the same page as that client. It's definitely vital at this point in time that the effective communication needs to happen between landlord and tenant. And remember, yes, we might be moving into alert level 1, but it doesn't mean the economy is in exactly the same phase as what we were at the beginning of the year. So there are still going to be deteriorations that we see, and hopefully through this process, both the landlord and tenant can reach an amicable solution to their current rental situation. From the TransUnion tab, we're going to give you all the information that has been submitted to the TransUnion database through SACRA, the South African Consumer Risk and Reporting Association. So we'll show you all that data. And this is all the data on all the tenants' other accounts, except for TPN accounts, because we are the only ones that have that information that you can see it on. Going to give you the consumer information, AKA information, consumer addresses, the telephone history, the occupation information that's saved on TransUnion. This is not verified like the TPN database. It's been loaded onto their systems, as well as consumer counters and consumer judgment information. So I want to cast your mind back to that summary page where I said that Fred Smith had 2 judgments that was on his name. And what we can see over here is how those 2 judgments were captured, what the amounts were, and where they were actually taken in which court. Remember, a consumer judgment is very different to blacklisting or profile information. It is a civil court record when a party sends out a summons to the other party and claims an amount of money through them from a civil proceeding through our courts. And what we can see here is the first judgment is from Fundamental Trust. It was taken in the Magistrates Court in Pretoria for an amount of 2,970 Rand. And then the second one, quite alarming, is that he did not pay school fees at ABC Primary School, and this was also through the Magistrates Court in Pretoria for a full amount of 158,000 Rand. Now, this is where the information starts to get so incredibly interesting. And going back to your question, Patience, this is where we get this information on. Is with that CCA summary payment profile, like we had on the summary page, we're going to show you that the person's got 15 active accounts. Their current balance is 1.8 million Rand. So that's all the debt that is currently owing to financial or other service providers, and these could include the banks as well. As a result of Fred not making payments, as he should on these accounts, his total arrears balance on those 15 accounts is 523,000 Rand. And as a result of the non-payments, remember the monthly payments have been pushed up. He currently needs to make monthly installments on that specific debt in the amount of 108,000 Rand. So from an affordability assessment, from your own perspective, without even having a look at the bank statements, we're going to give you the information that you require to be able to see whether Fred Smith can actually afford this rental or not. And what we can see over here is most definitely not. With the consumer payment profile, we're going to give you all those line accounts. We're going to tell you exactly what type of accounts Fred Smith has, what the balances was, whether they be opening current balances, the overdue amounts, and when these accounts were opened, and actually what the payment profile information looks like as well. So what we can see is Fred's got a Markham's clothing account. He is currently 2 months in arrears. These little numbers mean exactly what they say they mean. 0 months in arrears, 1 month in arrears, 2 months in arrears, 3 months in arrears, 4 months in arrears. It ranges all the way up to 9 months in arrears. And what we can see is obviously on the Markham's clothing account, he is currently 2 months in arrears. Another clothing account, so Fred Smith might look great when he comes to you during the application process and views the property, but he might not pay you rental. Well, he definitely isn't in this instance. Truworth's clothing account, 2 months in arrears as well. There's a Mr. Price weekend clothing account, 1 month in arrears. There's an ABSA credit card that's currently 54,000 Rand on the current balance, and the overdue amount is also 54,000 Rand. And what we can see is Fred Smith is currently 6 months in arrears, but also there's this weird little syntax. And if you see L's, H's, W's, X, Y, Z's, You all know already. Go and click on that View All Descriptions tab. It's going to open up a page for you depicting exactly what those specific letters mean. I know for a fact that L means handed over, legal, so it was handed over to attorneys for collection. There's an American Swiss jewelry account. The opening balance was 28,000 Rand, currently 2 months in arrears. A car for 6 months in arrears, 540,000 Rand car. Another credit card from Woolworths, which is 4 months in arrears, and outstanding balance of 43,000 Rand. Another clothing account at Woolworths for 1 month in arrears, 4,000 Rand in arrears. There's another car for 400,000 Rand, 6 months in arrears. Another car, 520,000 Rand outstanding balance with 6 months in arrears. Another credit card, 15,000 Rand with 1 month in arrears. And another car for 150,000 Rand, which is currently 9 months in arrears. So you see, we're going to give you all this information that's not just captured on the TPN database, but giving you an absolute view, a holistic view of everything that's captured on the tenant's credit profile. Yes, Michelle?
Charmaine's asking, what does PNC mean? P means paid up, C means closed, but there are all sorts of, there's L's, there's W's, there's all sorts of letters. Can you quickly address how we go and see where to find the keys?
No problem, Michelle. So I'm actually going to scroll up to this one, if you wouldn't mind, to this L already. As you see, this Fred Smith is with this ABSA credit card. He's 54,000 Rand in arrears. We can see here that he's 6 months in arrears, and it means an L. Like I mentioned, I know that L means legal. It means handed over to attorneys. But if you're uncertain of anything that is currently on the system, when it comes to little syntaxes, strange things that you come across, the L's, the H's, W's, all of those, the P's, the C's, click on View All Key Descriptions right over there, right on the right side of my head. And it's going to open up a page for you that actually shows you everything like that. But once again, we're here to help. If you're uncertain, contact the help desk, speak to Brian, speak to Desiree, and they'll be able to assist you with that as well. Moving further along, we are going to do the ID verification. You saw this on the first page. I'm just going to showcase this again. If you want to see the image, go and click View Image over there. But we saw that on the first page that his ID passes FICA muster, and it is actually the person that you're renting to. So we've run it through the National Populations Register as well as Home Affairs for you. Moving over to the deeds data, we are going to give you deeds information on Fred Smith as well. So if Fred Smith owns any current or previous properties, we can see that the current properties, both in Cape Town, both purchased for 1.5 million Rand and 2 million Rand respectively. And Fred sold a previous property as well in 2004 for 1.5 million Rand. With the bank code, account verification, qualifications check, and criminal check, if you've requested them through the system, they are going to be displayed over here for you. You can just click on the respective tabs and it's going to give you information specifically on the module that you've selected. Michelle, I'm going to quickly showcase the monitoring if you wouldn't mind. I see we're on 17 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Peter, if you can quickly showcase the monitoring, and I have promised our clients that you will quickly, and maybe do this first thing as you're on this part of the website.
Yes.
Quickly showcase the KYC and the pre-assessment.
Oh, lovely. Let's do that first.
If we could
Great.
do that. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm actually going to, let's paint a little bit of a picture. Let's do a story. So you've got Fred Smith. He would like to rent from you. You haven't gotten consent yet to run a credit check, but you're seeing Fred Smith this afternoon to view the property. And you'd like to know whether Fred would actually be able to afford the property, if there's any credit report indicators, negative information on Fred Smith's profile. You don't need consent to run a pre-assessment check because we're not giving you the financial information specifically from SACRA or from TPN on exactly how those accounts have been paid. But it's really as simple as this. So Fred comes to you, you'd like to view the property with him this afternoon, but you're unsure. Click on pre-assessment, go and fill out the reference, ID number, first name, surname, and the inquiry costing, and click perform check. And it's going to give you that ID verification that you saw on the first page of the actual credit report summary that we've just run through. What it's going to say is Fred Smith, once again, married male. He has been run through the Home Affairs system. He passes that, the National Populations Register. But the awesome information that we show you over here is just if Fred has judgments or defaults. So you already know your landlords, or you're a landlord yourself. You might not want to take tenants with judgments or defaults, but perhaps also in this instance, it opens up a frame of negotiation, because prior to Fred viewing, you can go, Fred, we see you've got a judgment, we see you've got a blacklisting. What is this for? How can we get this sorted out? What is your actual propensity to default? And then from the KYC check, which is absolutely, absolutely awesome. Remember, this is for FICA verification purposes. FICA is so vitally important. Remember, as an estate agent, you are an accountable institution and you need to be FICA compliant. But
on both your landlords and your tenants.
Both your landlords and your tenants. They are both considered your clients in terms of FICA. So you need to run this on both landlords and tenants. But it's as simple as this. You click on the Know Your Client, and I'm just going to quickly stop there because we get so many queries each and every single day regarding this. Tenants can't submit their IDs, their, let's call it their verified IDs with the Commissioner of Oath stamp on it. That is actually a verified ID. They can't submit that because they don't have access to internet. They might not be able to scan it and send it through to you. And that's all you need. All you need to do is run this KYC check because it's going to give you all that verified information already. So you type in your reference once again, RSA ID number, first name, surname, current address, postal code, and province. Remember, we are verifying not only the ID, but the address information as well through the deeds office as well as through the TPN database. And then you go and click perform credit check. And it's going to give you that information as well as a KYC result, a know your client result. And this says that Fred Smith has been confirmed, which means the ID has been verified, it matches his actual ID, the address has been verified, as well as the cell phone being verified to give you all that information. To download the KYC certificate, you just click on over there. It's going to download a specific certificate that you can keep on file without even having Fred Smith's or whoever landlord or tenant's details, their ID, their proof of address. You can just go and run this and keep it on file, and you are FICA compliant for those specific purposes of capturing the ID and proof of address. And then Michelle, last thing that we just want to showcase is this monitoring report. This is awesome. The reason why I say this is, like I said right at the beginning, you need to be proactive about your collections at the moment. You need to make absolutely certain that the people you are placing, yes, are correct, but also throughout the period of the lease agreement, how is their credit profile being affected as a result, not just of their payments to you, but to payments all across the board on all their accounts. And all you go and do is click your monitor report. It's going to open up a lovely page like this. We are going to do a full training session on the monitoring in the next systems training. So I'm sorry I'm running through this quite quickly, but I see on the clock we've got 12 minutes left. We can see from the monitoring that only 58% of the tenants on this current agency's book is currently being monitored. The reason for that is because they haven't run a TPN RentCheck inquiry in the past 12 months. So we can only monitor the tenants on a monthly basis if you submit data into the Bureau, as well as having performed the upper echelon, the premium RentCheck inquiry that we've got on the system that we just sent through on Fred Smith. The nice thing about this is when you go and click the active monitoring tab, we're going to show you exactly all of your debtors in arrears, debtors who are higher risk debtors, blacklisted debtors, not just through you, but through some or other service provider. So we're going to show you whether the tenants have been blacklisted in the last couple of months. And we're going to show you the credit scores of debtors monitored per month. And what we can see over here is this book has grown quite substantially and where the current risk is sitting on this book. And you're going to see exactly how that opens up for you. Chris has taken so much time doing this for us, and it looks absolutely wonderful. But you'll be able to see who of your tenants are at low risk, who are on average, who are on high risk, and who are on very high risk. So this is going to give you so much information at the end of the day if you need to do renewals on your tenants, or if your tenant has stopped making payments to you, to be able to see whether the tenant is actually in the financial difficulty, not just with you, but with other service and credit providers as well. But like I said, we're going to showcase this tenant monitoring for you in the next training session on TPN as well. Michelle, we've done this. We've gone through the entire system in 45 minutes. I actually can't believe it. We've got around about 12 minutes left for Q&A. So I'm going to open up the floor now for everybody, whether it's legal-based questions, whether it's systems-based questions. you're more than welcome to ask those questions right here, right now.
Okay, Peter, I have some questions that I've been making notes of, and I'm going to run them through them, and then as more questions come, I'll keep asking. So these are the ones that I've got so far. A potential client, this is asked by Austin, a potential client has a poor credit check due to her ex-husband running up debts. Ouch. She has sold the home and therefore has the cash to pay the year's rental up front. She is paying a year's rental. Thoughts?
Austin?
I can say I've had a tenant do that. I've had a tenant
please.
do that, and guess what? In month 13, boom, no more rent. So there is a risk.
100%, definitely. And that's what we see across the board, just like your situation right now, is that as much as a tenant may be able to make rental payments for an entire year up front, you're never guaranteed of that 13th payment. So inherently, it is a little bit of a bigger risk. Austin, what I would suggest is for something like this, if you need more information on that, pop me a mail and I'll be able to assist you directly with that tenant's account so that we can see perhaps taking a bigger deposit, perhaps in instances like that. But it's never a good idea.
Peter, if I can just jump in there, it's always about the circumstances of how the tenant got into that position. This particular lady has a feasible
solution.
And she's wanting to rehabilitate herself by taking the 12 months up front and helping her build a positive credit profile by giving her the paid on times for 12 months as she rehabilitates herself. I think that's exactly what credit bureaus are here to do, right?
That's exactly it, 100%. I would, however, suggest in instances like that, if she can make rental payments up front, I would suggest keeping a bigger deposit in trust.
3
so
months.
That if you've got the rental payments coming up in third month, 13, 14, 15, you're a little bit covered for those months as well.
I agree. Okay, so now we're going to go into blacklisting because there were quite a few blacklisting questions. And if I could just share with our delegates, we are absolutely doing our next webinar in October on submitting your data, sending out letter of demands, and using the blacklisting tab.
Yes.
But can we just touch on the legislation around blacklisting quickly, Peter? The legislation around loading the default, then loading the blacklisting, and when it needs to come off.
Of course. Okay. So with blacklisting, like we mentioned right at the beginning, blacklisting, remember, only stays on for a period of 12 months. That's it. Regardless of whether the tenant has made payment or not made payment, the blacklisting will only stay on the credit profile for 12 months. There's a regulatory process in terms of the National Credit Act on how to blacklist a tenant. Now, obviously, when we go through the TPN's training session next month, we're going to take you through that entire process, going through the bar graphs with you as well to show you exactly how you're supposed to do it. Regardless, the tenant must be 3 consecutive billing cycles in arrears. That means either partial payments or did not pays for 3 consecutive months, so January, February, March, to make it simple for myself, and a 20 business day letter of demand needs to have been sent to the specific tenant to be able to blacklist. What I would also suggest for all of those clients looking to blacklist tenants at the moment, Jade, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but please contact Jade at the office. She is our disputes manager. She's absolutely fantastic, and she'll take you through the entire process specifically on that tenant that is currently sitting with the situation of you needing to blacklist.
I've added Jade's email, legal@tpn.co.za.
Thank you, Michelle.
Fred is asking, can I blacklist a tenant that signed an AOD but then refused to pay?
Yes, you may definitely do so. Remember, with any acknowledgement of debt, and I'd like to see that acknowledgement of debt as well. Remember, TPN's got acknowledgements of debt as part of the TPN residential leaseback and commercial leaseback as well. But the AOD makes specific provision that if payments are not made in terms of the payment arrangement, the full debt in terms of that AOD would become immediately outstanding. And then you can take the 3 consecutive billing cycles depending on the previous payments that have been made. But once again, we'd like to see that specific scenario to make sure you are following the correct procedure yourself.
Okay. So we've had another question. How come a blacklist with a clothing store was years ago and it was paid up, but it's still on TPN and other credit bureaus? Do the credit bureaus not have to update their information?
They definitely do. TPN, and I can say this, and all credit bureaus in the countries are mandated by the NCR as well as the National Credit Act to only have updated, correct, accurate information on their systems. So what I would suggest is if a tenant has something like that on their profile, depending if it's on TPN or TransUnion, you open up a dispute through the credit bureau, and the credit bureau needs to sort out that dispute, whether they take it off the system or they keep it on the system within 20 business days of submission of that dispute. So that's the dispute procedure. It's actually quite simple to do through any of the credit bureaus that can be undertaken.
Okay. Anne-Marie is asking, when a current tenant is retrenched due to COVID, and we've had lots of COVID questions, Peter, when a current tenant is retrenched due to COVID, obviously it will affect their rental payments. Is there any way to record on TPN on the system? Partial payments are made to that date. And I'm just going to make sure that you respond by saying the COVID agreements that needed to be in place.
That's exactly it. So like we mentioned at the beginning, the rental recovery documents, they're obviously still applicable. In instances where a tenant cannot make rental payments at this point in time, you're more than welcome to contact us as well for some advice through the legal channels, and then we can assist you in either using certain documents, perhaps an acknowledgement of debt, perhaps a settlement agreement, perhaps even using a rental deferment agreement with different terms depending on when the payment dates must actually occur. Michelle, I'm just going to actually take this time because we're dealing with COVID and we're dealing with the lockdown. Remember, we're still in alert level 1. That inherently means for all landlords, estate agents, and other parties wanting to evict at this point in time, the same rules apply as alert level 2. I did a video with Silna Stain, I don't know, about 2 weeks ago on alert level 2 regulations dealing specifically with evictions. Those stay 100% in place for alert level 1. So what that means is that you are able to approach the courts for an eviction order through attorneys. However, the court, in almost all circumstances, taking into account the just and equitableness of the nature of the eviction, may suspend or stay the order for the execution. That means the actual order that the sheriff needs to go out to execute to forcibly remove the person from the premises up until the end of the state of national disaster, and that's currently set at 15th of October, but it may be extended. We've got no idea.
Okay, so Peter, I just want to make sure everyone 100% understands that. The courts will grant your order. You will get your eviction order. It just means that the execution is stayed until the end of the state of national disaster.
That is 100%
fantastic. Becky has a question. I have a landlord who did not vacate the property. The tenant paid a partial deposit and full rent. The landlord took the money and cancelled the lease. And there was a very angry face at the end of that.
Ooh, was it a very angry face?
It was a very angry face. Terrible. It was red and angry. What does Becky do? Because there is places that 100%. The tenant can go.
So with tenant and landlord disputes at this point in time as well, specifically taking into consideration things like spoliation, switching off of electricity, or even retaining of a deposit or rental amounts that the landlord is not entitled to, take all those matters through to the Rental Housing Tribunal. They have set up a sort of virtual and perhaps a easier process to be followed so that the disputes between landlord and tenant can be catered for at this point in time. So Rental Housing Tribunal would be the right place to go. If you require those details, please contact the legal help desk and we'll assist you.
And we have been communicating. Peter, TPN has been communicating with the tribunal. They're active, they're open, and they are there to resolve these.
Yes.
Absolutely. So Charmaine has a question. A recent applicant where the tenant had pay slips from the company, she said she was employed and her bank statements reflected the same, yet the company denied any knowledge of her employment. Woo! Creating fake supporting documents.
And that is happening all across the board. Trust me, fake or fraudulent applications on leases. Don't think it's one and now and again. It happens every single day. We get queries every single day from clients, specifically on fraudulent proofs of payment, fraudulent bank statements, and other information that they provide to agencies or the landlords that's not correct. Run the TPN credit check because that is going to give you all the information that you require. Submit the data and run the RentCheck inquiry because then all that information will be displayed.
Peter, I have 2 more questions that I really want to ask. In fact, 3 more questions, and we've got 2 minutes.
Perfect.
So, our third log question, Liesel's asking, is asking for a pay slip as proof of income discriminatory?
Definitely not. It is absolutely vital for rental that you do get pay slips so that you can see if the person is actually employed at the company and what they are currently busy making, along with the person's financial statements, bank statements. That is an absolute must.
Okay, Charmaine is asking, can a tenant refuse to pay because he's not happy with the condition of the unit, maintenance, although the owner agreed to do repairs, but now the tenant refuses access? Well, that's a problem.
Interesting. Okay. So tenants and landlords sit in a very equal position in rentals. I don't know if you all know this, but what happens when a landlord or a tenant doesn't pay rental? A landlord needs to send a letter of demand, and if the tenant doesn't make payment within that time period, they may cancel the lease agreement. So they have a remedy to the breach. Same with tenants. The only way that a tenant can get a landlord to perform maintenance, to do specific performance, to cancel the contract in an instance where the landlord is in breach, is sending the landlord a letter of demand, giving the landlord a time period to remedy the breach in terms of the contract, and perhaps even cancelling the lease agreement, asking specific performance at that point in time. We would suggest that tenant contact me direct, and I could perhaps assist them with trying to sort out their situation. But note, it is not correct for a tenant, even if ill maintenance is performed on a property, to not make rental payments. You don't get two wrongs make a right here. It's
Peter,
either one or the other.
Peter, if you were wondering what that alarm bell was, it's your hours up.
My hours up.
So, last question, because
No
we're having a hard close here. Last
Perfect.
question from Moses was, what happens if a company signs? Does he need to have the director sign surety? Does he have to have it, or is it best practice?
It depends entirely on the tenant. Obviously, if it's a bigger based national tenant, they will not sign surety on a lease agreement. If it is a person with a Pty limited closed corporation trading out of his own name, perhaps a smaller business, it's imperative for the landlord to take sureties, but it really does depend on the individual landlord and the individual tenant. It's all about negotiation at that point in time.
Peter, thank you, and thanks to our delegates, and thanks for all the wonderful feedback that we've received. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. And don't forget, if you need help and assistance, our help desk is available, our data team is available, our legal team is available, and we're at your beck and call. Thanks,
Thank
Peter.
you so much, Michelle.